Two great smartphone devices, 4 years pushing the boundaries of each other and what a smartphone can be. Competition in this space is getting fierce year after year, and who knows what the future holds. But right now, these two stand at the top. One device continues to refine, meticulously crafted, every external detail perfected. The other, it reinvents itself, pushing new features, driving innovation forward. But while one excels in productivity, maximizing its processing power, the other is a canvas designed for simplicity and creativity. This is my comparison review, the Galaxy S25 Ultra versus the iPhone 16 Pro. Two of the best smartphones money can buy, but which one delivers the most complete experience? And more importantly, which one is the best value for you? Now, before we start, I know battery life has always been a big question, especially on this channel when I'm complaining about battery all the time. But since I'm not using the Pro Max this year, I won't be doing a direct battery comparison between these two. I will though talk about battery life in isolation for both phones where it makes sense. With that out of the way, we're covering design, display, cameras, performance, gaming, AI features and much more. And by the end, you will know the pros and cons of each device and exactly which one is worth your money as well. At least I hope so. Let's start with the basics. Design and build quality. Both of these phones are built like every piece of tech should be these days, but they take very different approaches. Apple, as always, plays it fairly safe here, but refined from previous models. It feels like a refined 15 Pro. While Samsung leans into a bit more functionality and more of a bolder statement here.
Now, when I say going for a bolder statement, I mean this comparatively with the S24 Ultra. Going for this flat screen and the rounded corners here feels to me like a much bigger departure from a design perspective.
The iPhone 16 Pro keeps that titanium frame from last year. It's lighter, feels just as premium as the 15 Pro did, and Apple has slightly tweaked a little bit the contours as well to make it more comfortable to hold, and you do feel that. The buttons, yes, I include the camera control button as a button here. It's very tactile and cool to have, I guess. Not that useful for me. I haven't actually used it for months. I can't remember last time I actually tried to use it. And I think that's true for a lot of iPhone users. At least a lot of the ones that I spoke to never use the action button or the camera control button.
And that's kind of it. It feels really nice and it's a refined design, but feels quite meaningless to me.
This can be subject to your preference, of course, but if I didn't give you my opinion, then you may as well just watch a video made by AI, right? On the other hand, the Galaxy S25 Ultra doesn't try to shy away from its signature look. It's boxier than before, but still massive, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. The weight distribution overall is way better than last year's S24 Ultra for me, and one major thing about this phone, just like the S24 Ultra, this display is way less reflective than anything on the market. It's a design feature, of course, and we are going to talk about this in a bit, but this new anti-reflective tech here means fewer fingerprints, way less glare, of course, which is fantastic, especially in bright conditions. It's just amazing to use, which leads us perfectly into the display comparison.
Both displays are some of the best in the industry, really. I've been trying quite a few phones this year, and these two are up there with the best. But we can't deny that when it comes to the displays, Samsung has a definitely clear edge here on the anti-reflective display. In a day like this, where you've got a rare bit of sunshine coming through, just reading something on the screen, it makes it much better. I mean, not that the iPhone screen is bad, but it's just much better to use the S25 Ultra for that.
Both phones have incredible screens. Don't get me wrong, they're both awesome. But Samsung, for me, still holds the crown here, especially with this display, which we've seen before on the S24 Ultra, but is still just way better than everything else on the market, not just the iPhone. Here's the thing though, Apple's Super Retina XDR display, whatever they call this thing, is fantastic. It's sharp, vibrant, and Apple does do a great job with color in general. There are times, especially when I'm using the camera, when I prefer the colors on the iPhone. Rare to happen, but it does happen. Most of the time, I think the display colors in general are just a bit too warm now on the iPhone. I also noticed that there's a weird thing on the iPhone display in a very specific scenario, but it's definitely worth mentioning. Not sure you can see this on the video. I tried to capture here, but basically, if there's a flickering on the sky.
Some weird flickering on the iPhone screen. Can you see that? Whoa, what's going on there?
Nothing beneath the skies is flickering, but the sky seems to be doing some crazy things in here. Even though I had exposure locked in. Samsung, on the other hand, as I said earlier, they introduced this anti-reflective glass last year, which is fantastic. It does mean way less glare in all sorts of conditions, not just bright sunlight, but in anywhere with any reflections, right? Honestly, let me tell you, once you've used this, it's really hard to go back to anything else. It's not impossible. I like, for example, the OnePlus 13 display for different reasons. It's bright and it's, you know, very vibrant. I do wish Samsung actually brought this to the Tab S series and other S series as well, because it's just a beautiful display.
Now, I just started to look at the Oppo Find N5, and one of the refreshing things about this phone is that it is also using this technology on the screen, this anti-reflective display. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same as Samsung, but it certainly reduces a lot of those reflections, and it feels like that's the way to go as an industry. And Samsung may actually have to watch over their shoulders because the competition are coming for them, right? And Apple, on the other hand, I don't know, it feels to me like they went a little bit backwards. When they had the 14 Pro Max launch and introduced the dynamic island, I felt like that was the opportunity to remove distractions from the screen. Okay, they've got sensors in here, but you know, when we think about if anyone has budget and creativity and the ability to bring something to the market without any distractions on the display, that would be Apple, right?
I actually dropped both of these phones recently. Nothing happened to the S25 Ultra miraculously because I had no case. You can kind of feel it a little bit, and I'll try to do a macro shot of this. I can't see the damage, but I can feel it a little bit rough on the corner where it hit the ground. The iPhone did have a case when I dropped it, and it did a great job, to be fair. You know, shout out to ESR, not sponsored, but should be. Their cases are amazing. Now, both of these displays are adaptive 120Hz displays, or promotion as Apple calls it, which means everything is buttery smooth when it needs to be and power efficient when it doesn't. But if you're someone who likes to customize your display colors a little bit more in the settings, Samsung does give you more control in here from a kind of brightness perspective, but also from a resolution and the color profile perspective. With the iPhone, you get what you get, right? It's stuck on Apple's factory settings, and while they're great, you don't get a lot of choice here. You know, they will appeal to a lot of people, and they've been like this forever. I think they're starting to kind of, you see, for example, in the camera, you can add kind of baked in colors into the photos, but you can't yet tweak the colors on the display itself. When it comes to text clarity, I usually forget to test this actually. Both are razor sharp, and I'll try to capture that here in a macro lens so you can see really in detail, but let me know which one looks best for you. At the end of the day, both screens are industry leading, but for outdoor visibility, customization of colors, and that anti-reflective magic, Samsung is simply ahead in my opinion. Let's have a look at the cameras now. Some portrait shots here to get us going. I need a better model really, but ignoring that bit, both do perform really well in this mode. It's gonna be pretty rare, but on both devices, sometimes you might see that, you know, the edge detection doesn't work that well, or there's a little bit of blur, too much, you know. You can control that in post on the phone itself. I'd say with portrait shots for most regular use, like posting on social media or sharing with your family and friends, they're pretty good actually on both phones.
Thankfully, I did get a better model, so I got my son to pose for me here. And to me, it's gonna come down to your preference really. The iPhone is just not as true to life as it used to be, in my opinion. For many people though, the iPhone image here will look nicer. For me, I prefer the sharpness of the subject and the cooler tone as well of the S25 Ultra. The fall off in focus is very similar, but the iPhone, when you look a little bit closer, seems to happen a lot earlier. By the time you get to the back of his head, it's already blurry, whereas the S25 Ultra keeps that sharpness going a little bit beyond his face a little bit. You can see that quite clearly as well by the difference in focus in his ears.
In regular, just point and shoot photos, in most situations, I think the S25 Ultra is just generating a more pleasing shot. For example, in situations where there's a blurring of the background, I think Samsung is doing a better job here controlling the highlights and adding a nice glow and a nice, you know, the blurry effect is just more pleasing to the eye, I think. It's getting closer and closer to what a normal camera looks like. It's almost like they're adding a mist filter in some shots as well, which, you know, is very subtle. I could be wrong, it could be just my eyes, but this shot here, for example, in Covent Garden in London, is a good example of that. In low light, I gotta say, the majority of the shots that I took look better to my taste anyway on the iPhone. But it seems to come at an expense in terms of sharpening, over sharpening. To me though, it's just a more pleasing look on the iPhone, and it's actually because of that warmer color. I think that warmer tone sort of helps here in this scenario. So if you look at this lighting here under these arches, The S25 Ultra is more true to life, to be fair. This is how I remember the image with my own eyes. But the iPhone looks nicer here, in my opinion. In this other shot here, where we've got low light in the background, it's kind of really harsh, cheap lights as well in the foreground, and not very interesting, but a pretty challenging shot to take and make any sense of it. But we can see here how the iPhone deals with it much better again. Perhaps not as much detail in the shadows, but the S25 Ultra just went a little bit crazy on the highlights here, which made the shot pretty much unusable. It's kind of tricky to judge sharpness in general because I think, you know, I was doing everything handheld, so there's always going to be an element of camera shake, but overall I do think the iPhone is slightly more over-sharpening low light in general. If you zoom into those cobblestones here, for instance, the S25 Ultra is just generating a more kind of moodier shot, more natural look for me. But not for the first time in low light shots, the S25 Ultra is struggling a little bit here controlling the highlights when you look at the shop signs where we lost all the color. Either flaw, if you like, either in sharpness or in color, come down to your personal taste at the end, and both can be fixed either by using color profiles baked into the shot or using photo editing software like Lightroom afterwards. When it comes to zoom and detail in both video and photo, by the way, for me the S25 Ultra just takes better shots more consistently. Sometimes the iPhone does a great job as well, but on the main camera, the iPhone just adds a heck of a lot of noise in video, particularly anything beyond like 10x, you know, is actually unusable as well. On the telephoto, on the 5X, it's a similar story again. The iPhone seems to generate a little bit more noise and more, not so much noise, it's kind of just less detail, it's more mushiness, I think I would call it. Whereas the S25 Ultra is a very similar image, but as soon as you look into the detail, you see that it is a better, perhaps, it doesn't look like it's getting more pixels in, but it just feels more detailed. Yeah, for me, quality overall in this sort of telephoto lens is not even that close actually when it comes to zoom. And here's just a quick look into video stabilization as well. This shot here is just me essentially walking and holding both phones like this, just kind of trying to keep it stable, but walking, no gimbals or anything like that. I do think stabilization has come a long way on all devices. You know, it used to be just like on action cameras. Now these phones all have really good stabilization, but let me know which one you prefer here. I'll be quiet for a bit though and put up some shots side by side here so you can appreciate them, take a better look as well without me interfering. Hope you enjoyed that and a bit of music as well. And talking about music, what are the speakers like on these phones? Bear in mind though that even though the 16 Pro speakers might be the same as the Pro Max, I'm not sure, I've got to fact check that. There's probably going to be a slight difference between the Pro and the Pro Max, but let's listen to them.
This is our home, De Silva. You're very welcome at Tolman.
Thank you. I'm using my other name now, Senna, Ayrton Senna. And don't worry about the trucks. What matters to me is the car.
This is our home, De Silva. You're very welcome at Tolman.
Thank you. I'm using my other name now, Senna, Ayrton Senna. And don't worry about the trucks. What matters to me is the car.
To me, the S25 Ultra sounds a little bit fuller, and even a max volume as well still sounds clearer to me, so not a lot of distortions. I know it's hard to do that on YouTube over microphones and your speakers as well. If you're wearing earbuds, it's probably going to be better to kind of get a difference here. But let me know what you thought anyway. For performance, I thought I'd give you some real-world scenarios rather than just benchmarks. Benchmarks are great, but I think it's best to show you, what it means in practice, right? So let's export some raw photos, 4K video, and play some games as well on both devices. When it comes to exporting videos, I used CapCut to export a 4K 60 video into a 1080p version, and the iPhone was actually a lot faster here, not just in one occasion. And this may be due to the app itself, we never know, but I tried this with many different videos on separate days, and the iPhone was always quite a bit faster to render the video. Gaming is super smooth on both phones. The S25 Ultra to me has a better speaker for gaming, and the display on the S25 Ultra is of course much better due to minimum distractions, no dynamic island here, but the iPhone display is no slouch. It gets bright enough to play in any condition really. Temperature-wise, the iPhone does get a bit warmer than the S25 Ultra, so that new, larger vapor chamber on the S25 Ultra is doing a great job in keeping it cool. Now, when it comes to AI, Apple really falls behind for me. Sure, the features are getting to the iPhone, but the execution is terrible.
Can you look at my calendar and look at what the best time for a workout is in the next couple of weeks, please? Okay, never mind.
I haven't really seen many worse kind of releases of software globally. It's just been a dog's dinner, really, as they say. And even when you do get it, Apple Intelligence to me feels just cobbled together really in a rush, whereas Galaxy AI feels more mature. They're getting rid of the gimmicky aspect of AI. They're making it more useful for productivity and just day-to-day work. It's not quite perfect yet.
Can you look at my the Liverpool matches for the next 3 weeks and add them to my calendar, please?
I think there are areas for improvement here, but for me is now essential. I can't live without some of the AI tools that we've got here. I reviewed a few phones this year already, and when it comes to AI features and ease of use of them as well, Samsung seems to be just ahead, right? I love the Pixel as well for that, but I don't know. One UI 7 overall feels more fluid. When I say AI features in this context, I don't mean the computational photography aspect alone, which, you know, Apple does do as well. I'm talking more about the assistant-like features like writing assist or writing tools on the iPhone, generative AI features to kind of remove things from photos and things like that. But when we do look at photo-related AI, you know, let me show you this. This is a shot that I took from the top of the Shard in London. You see these horrible reflections? It's very hard to avoid them, you know, unless you're using filters and things like that with a proper camera. It's just insane, right? Lots of people have been trying online to do this thing where you put your face and try to get the AI to replace or to kind of make up what's behind your hand. And it's crazy, right? How good the Galaxy AI stuff is. And it's not exactly right, but quite scary how good it is. And Apple Intelligence was embarrassingly all over the place in this aspect. By the way, this video unfortunately is not sponsored again, so your help in getting this content discovered out there is even more appreciated than normal. Making these videos is super hard, right? Juggling this with my other 9-to-5 job, and not to mention how expensive it can be, right, to buy these devices and equipment and rent a studio. So if you're enjoying this video, leave me a like and, you know, I'll take your sharing of the video over any sponsorship money right now. One feature that I've always enjoyed on recent iPhones is log recording. And in fact, you know, it's probably one of the reasons I kept the iPhone for so long in previous years. This made the iPhone just, you know, a cut above the rest when it came to video, for pros especially. Well, now we have Samsung Log too. And I was a little bit skeptical to start with, but it's actually great. You know, I actually asked Samsung directly recently about whether they're thinking about opening this app for custom color profiles so that you can add your own LUTs and things like that in there. The answer was very like PR friendly, you know, so they wouldn't commit to anything, but they said that One UI 7 will continue to improve, especially when it comes to video editing features in the Studio app. So you can kind of read between the lines there. My assumption will be that it will, you know, that Studio app will have a way of adding more color profiles, maybe their own colors to start with, and then your LUTs maybe in future. That would be amazing, because as a creator, I could say, for example, you can buy the Alex Gear and Tech look or whatever, right? But anyway, but what we have already is great on both phones. I think Samsung is friendlier to use because you can already kind of convert that log footage on device, but both are really good. Now, something that I always forget to test is signal strength. You know, at the end of the day, these are still mobile phones, and you know, people might want to make a phone call with them, right? And rather than just giving you a subjective view of this, which I've done before, I took a reading at a couple of different places of the actual data, you know, behind the little bars, because, you know, 1 bar, 2 bars, that doesn't mean a lot, right? And there's a lot of numbers here, but the ones that we need to focus on are RSRP for signal strength, RSRQ for connection stability, and SINR to see how interference affects the data speeds. By the way, there are apps that will tell you this information in a much more friendly way, but it's essentially a field test mode, which you can enable by just typing this code on your phone. Now, when it comes to productivity, this category is something that is probably not even fair to compare, because the iPhone simply doesn't have that many features, but it would be omissive of me not to mention it. At the basic level, Samsung has the best multitasking features. It is second to none, really. You know, other Android phones can multitask, but Samsung is simply better at this. On the more advanced side of things, you know, we get the S Pen, of course, which is not only useful for productivity, of course, you know, you can do some creative stuff with it. I love editing photos in Lightroom, for example, using the S Pen. It's one of my favorite pastimes. And another more advanced feature in this area is Samsung DeX, DeX turns the S25 Ultra and many other Galaxy devices into a portable and very friendly, low-powered but capable desktop. All you have to do is connect the phone to the monitor via USB-C and boom, right? You get an awesome desktop experience, as you can see here. And when you pair this with something like the espresso displays, a travel mouse and a keyboard, this pretty much negates the need for a laptop in a lot of scenarios.
Now, I appreciate that the productivity aspects may not be of interest to many of you out there, especially if you have an iPhone and an iPad or an iPhone and a MacBook or all of the above. I can't really blame you for thinking, what the hell do I need DeX for? I personally really like and hope that Samsung develops it further because it is amazing for me. Even if I don't use it every day, it's so nice when I do need it. It's, to have that option is great for me. But there is something that I should mention in contrast, which is the friendliness of using the iPhone. FaceTime, for example, is so good. I know we can do video calling in many different ways on Android devices, but man, FaceTime, especially when you're traveling, it looks better, it feels more stable. It's just easier to use as well.
Now, there's something I was reluctant to mention, which is my personal experience of the iPhone. It's been terrible, and I delayed making this video because I wanted to give Apple a chance to kind of try and either fix it or give me a replacement for this phone. So I delayed this video until Apple had a proper look at it. They did run some diagnostics, both online and then in person. I had to reset my phone, kind of not restore it from a backup, basically start from scratch. And I'm now running the latest iOS 18.3 at the time of recording. It still overheats. Sometimes for no apparent reason, I'll just feel this hot thing in my pocket. It hasn't crashed since going to 18.3. It was crashing a lot on 18.2, and you can go back to my 30-day challenge where I used everything was Apple ecosystem for 30 days. But I still every now and then notice some annoying lag. Sometimes it's just, when I'm typing, not doing anything crazy, literally just typing a text or an email, and I'll see one of the letters get stuck on the screen, and then I'm still hearing the clicking. But anyway, it's just very laggy, the clicking as well. Doesn't happen a lot. It's virtually impossible to capture that on video unless I'm doing a 24-hour stream. But yeah, it still happens. I do appreciate though that not everyone is having this problem. It's a bit crap that Apple looked at this in 2 occasions and found nothing wrong with it on the software or the hardware. I might get a second phone as well just to compare them. Because look, I've been doing this for a while. I'm no expert, I don't know everything. I'm just a guy trying phones on the internet. But it just doesn't feel like normal behavior. And I feel like I'd be unfair if I criticized it too much. It feels like it's a unit issue. Now, both of these phones are phenomenal, right? When you think about the tech that's involved in producing these devices and getting them to your hands. But if I had to choose just the one, it would have to be the S25 Ultra. It's the more complete package. It suits my use way more than the iPhone. And it's just, for me, a better device. I can recommend it a lot more easily than the iPhone. For me, the S25 Ultra has better camera versatility, more AI tools, true pro level features, some of which you do have on the iPhone as well. But I just feel like you get more on the S25 Ultra. But let's be real, even though Apple isn't my favorite right now in terms of handheld devices, the iPhone isn't bad, and Apple has strong customer support, something that really in general we shouldn't ignore. I mean, I didn't get the best experience, to be fair, but I know that historically and in comparison, they do offer better customer support. And they do have a great ecosystem of other devices that go well with the iPhone. Sometimes overrated, I think, but for many people, it offers that simplicity of everything just connected, working seamlessly together, most of the time anyway. And another point on Apple devices is it holds its value longer. Whether we like it or not, it just, it's easier to sell and not lose a lot of money when you sell your iPhone. But you're also locked into Apple's own way of doing things, which doesn't suit everyone. If you want more control, more features, and a phone that actually makes the most of its processing power, the Galaxy S25 Ultra for me is the one to get.
That's it for today, guys. I hope you had fun watching. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more awesome content. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me. I appreciate you all. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.